Welcome to Loading Data Sources from the Web. Let's take a look at a practical example of how we can pull data from the web, format it in TouchDesigner, and then interact with it here in our network. So we're going to start by opening up our OpCreate dialog and adding a web client DAT here into our network. Now we're going to use the web client to fetch data from a website or from a web request. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use this little bit of placeholder data. Now it's not uncommon that we want to actually work with some kind of placeholder when we're getting started, because this makes sure that we don't have to think about some of the other requirements that typically go into working with data. And so this is a great way for us to kind of get started. I'm going to take this link and I'm going to post it right here in our URL. And then I'm going to change our request method to get instead of post. Now, if I hit request here, what we should see is that we have all of our headers here, and then I can see the data here that we actually want to use. So let's go ahead and add a few other operators to our network. Now I'm going to add a text stat here. This is going to act as our buffer. We're actually going to hold on to all that data. So I'm going to change the content language to JSON, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up the callbacks. Let's just add one line of code here. So what we're going to do is we'll make this viewer active. And what I want to do is I want to find the operator called text1, or the operator whose path is text1. And I want its .text to be set to our data.decode. And our data here, I can see that I have this object that I can use, and I'm going to decode it. I'm going to convert it from bytes into something that we can actually read. So let's go ahead and hit request and see what we've got. So right away, I can see that we have what looks to be a list or an array. We can tell that because we have this set of square braces here. So it looks like we're already off to a good start. Let's go ahead and add a JSON DAT here into our network and connect that here to our text DAT. And this looks great. Next, what we're going to do is let's go ahead and see if we can convert this into a table. Now, this doesn't look right. And what I can do next is I can change our output type from filter.results to just filter.result. Excellent. So I already have a table that has all the contents that I'm after here. So I have my column headers, user ID, title, and completed. Let's go ahead and add a null to the end of this. And let's see if we can then move this into, say, a text top. I'm going to add a text top here into the network. I'm going to clear out the default text, and I'm going to grab this null one and I'm going to drop it on this DAT parameter. Now here my row and columns are where I can specify which row and which column I want to pull information from. So I think what I want to do is I want to pull it here from column 2. And we should see that as we increment our row that we're moving down through the rows of our table. Let's go ahead and turn our word wrap on. And I think I want to make this, say, a little bit larger, maybe 500. And I want to turn the font down to, say, something more like 20. Excellent. Now this is already looking great. And in fact, if I change the row here, this is exactly what I want it to do, but I would love to be able to do this with a button instead. Let's go ahead and add a button component here into our network. And let's see what that might look like. Now, what I want to do is I want to think about every time I click on this button, I want to perform an action. And we can do that here with a parameter execute. So I'm going to drop my parameter execute here into my network. I'm going to take my button, I'm going to drag it on top of this parameter execute. And what I need to do next is I need to specify which parameter do I want to watch. If I come back over to this button and look at the button page, we'll see that I have this value parameter. So value 0, this is actually what I want to use because I want to watch to see the change of this. So I'm going to look for value 0. And we can see that we have this value change callback. That's what we're actually going to work with. Now, one important thing for us to take a look at quickly, let's make our button viewer active, is that when we click on it, we can see that its default state is toggled down. So our value goes on, our value goes off. And what I want to actually do is I only want to work with a momentary button because I want this to kind of turn on and off. So I can go through our rows one at a time here. Now, with that in place, let's go ahead and we can add just 2 lines of code. I'm going to make my parameter viewer active. I'm going to come in here to this on value change, and I'm going to check to see if par.eval, and this .eval is important. This helps ensure that we're evaluating the parameter and that we have the correct state of the parameter. So par.eval. So if we're true, in other words, if this is on, what we're going to do is we're going to say the operator whose path is text2, the par here, the parameter I want to target is going to be row index. Par.row index is going to be plus equal to 1. So I'm just going to add 1 to this parameter when I click on it. And what we should see here is that as I click on this button, I'm incrementing through my rows. That's excellent. And in fact, if I want to go one step further, I could call this maybe next row. And while we're at it, let's just go ahead and take these operators. Let's copy paste. Let's pull them down here and let's change this to say PREV, our previous row. And now we're going to change this expression to be minus equals 1 instead of plus equals 1. And this means that here we should see that we're going to count down and we're going to count up. This is a great way for us to just build something really quickly that allows us to pull data directly from the web, format it as a table that we can interact with, and add 2 interface elements that allow us to both move up through our rows and move back through our rows. This is a kind of quick example of how we can work with data, and it's a really exciting way that we can get started.